Since we're all going to be pretending to be college basketball experts in about 3.5 weeks, I decided to call in a real college basketball expert. On3's James Fletcher III. He handles our bracketology, our bubble watch, and there's a lot to watch right now, a lot to talk about, because this has been a pretty crazy week, especially in the ACC, James. So Virginia losing to Pitt, North Carolina losing to Syracuse. Now, this is a league that has some very good teams at the top, but I'm sure a 15-team league is not excited about looking down the barrel of a 4-team tourney bid.
Yeah, and we had actually just a few weeks ago we had national pundits in college basketball talking about a potential 2-bid ACC. Now that was never really going to happen. Clemson was always going to find their footing a little bit. Wake Forest has looked good, and now obviously we've seen Virginia up until that loss this weekend that you talked about. They've looked a lot better in recent weeks, but the ACC, they are in trouble for a 15-team league, a team that historically is one of the best college basketball conferences that we have. To be struggling the way that they are, it is a real problem for them. And we're going to see, it's going to come down to the wire how many teams they're able to get into the field this year.
And, what is the reason for that? I mean, who isn't performing the way they should be?
Well, I think that it's a combination of things here, as it always is. We've seen NIL and the transfer portal have changed the way that you have to coach basketball. So perhaps part of it, I think certainly part of it is on the coaches and the schools themselves to prioritize basketball. I think in the world of college football that we've seen, obviously that drives revenue. Having to put so much attention on keeping this conference together, figuring out how to expand there, perhaps it has made basketball take a little bit more of a backseat than it should have. I think another conference that you can see that went the opposite direction, put a lot of focus on basketball, is the Big 12. And we've seen that they're probably the best conference in college basketball this season. So I think a combination of that, along with scheduling, college basketball scheduling has never been more important than it is with the net rankings. Obviously, in the past, you had different computer metrics, but the net really cares about how you schedule. And that's shown in the quadrant system. If you just schedule a bunch of cupcakes, a bunch of directional schools, they're not going to reward you when we get to March. They really don't care about those games at all in quadrant 3 and 4.
Well, you mentioned the Big 12. Have they kind of cracked the code on the non-conference scheduling? Because it seems like they enter conference play where everybody's super high in the net rankings. And so it almost doesn't, like, as long as you win some games, and you don't even, I don't even know if you have to go 500 in the Big 12.
That's the debate that we're looking at right now, is do you even have to go 500 in the Big 12? And I think that certainly a lot of the teams in the Big 12 have cracked that code to figuring it out. I think the best example I've seen perhaps in the country is TJ Otzelberger and Iowa State. I know that's a school that everyone will kind of go, what? Really? They're the best at this? Yes. They have pretty much all season been top 10 in the net rankings. Now, were they one of the 10 best teams in college basketball in December or even right now? Probably not. But what they did better than anyone else in the country is they figured out which games were going to be quad 2 games, quad 1 games, but were still really winnable. What games could they get early on that would boost the resume? And then not only that, this is something that a lot of older college coaches, a lot of ingrained in the sport guys are struggling with, is you're now rewarded for keeping your foot on the gas pedal against these lower teams. Now, a lot of coaches, and probably rightfully so, want to get the walk-ons in. They want to reward some of the freshmen, see what they've got. But then you see a 25-point lead turn into a 10-point win. And the numbers just care. They don't care who's on the floor. They care about your points per possession, 3-point make rates. All those things go into these formulas. And so when you start looking at it that way, a team that plays 7 or 8 guys, no matter who they're playing, is going to just be at an advantage versus a team that's trying to get everyone involved through the non-conference schedule.
And so they've won 6 of their last 7, Iowa State. They get Texas Tech on Saturday. Texas Tech coming off the blowout win against Kansas, where Bill Self got himself ejected because he didn't want to watch anymore. But and then like, I'm telling you right now, I am predicting this as I've predicted this the past 3 weeks. Iowa State will lose at Houston on Big Monday because it's home game against a pretty good team. followed by a road game against a really good team on Big Monday 2 days later. Like, you're going to lose.
Yeah, it's just brutal. And I mean, just beyond having to play Houston on itself, which is never an easy game against Kelvin Sampson and his team, especially the way they want to play. They want to get after you on the boards. They want to play tough and physical. So to have to go up against the Texas Tech team that, like you said, really good this weekend, turn around that short of notice and play a team that's that good, I think I have to agree with you there. They're in a real tough spot. And I think we've seen just about everyone in the Big 12 fall victim to that at some point so far in the conference schedule.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas went into the Octagon of Doom right after they beat Houston, and they lose to K-State. They beat Baylor on a Saturday. 2 days later, they're in Lubbock. You're going to lose. Like,
it's so tough to do. I mean, we don't think about it. College football, we have 7 days between each team pretty much every time, with especially the big schools. And for these guys to go 5 days without a game, you get so ramped up for it. You're ready to go. It's a big marquee matchup. You give everything you have out there. And now you say, hey, all right, now take less than half that amount of time and do the same thing. It's just really hard to do.
And you're not really even doing any on-floor prep for this really good team that you're about to play on the road. It's all film work and walkthrough type stuff. And it's amazing. So let's turn to the SEC. You've got Kentucky. They got to play Auburn. Now, Kentucky stopped the home slide and beat Ole Miss the other day. But has Coach Cal figured something out, or it seems like he's still experimenting with lineups, and I'm not sure he's found what he wants yet?
I think we're still kind of waiting to see with this Kentucky team, because certainly they looked better defensively against Ole Miss than they did in the previous few games, especially at home. But I think that also kind of goes down to having varying minutes with Rob Dillingham on the floor. So what do you do with him? He's probably your best NBA draft prospect. He's definitely your best offensive weapon, but you seem to be better with him off the floor. So how does Calipari balance that long term? Because there's going to be games where they need that offensive firepower. How are they able to get him on the floor, but not see that defense really just cater the way it has recently? So I think we're still waiting to see about John Calipari, that Kentucky team, and what they're going to be when we get into March.
And meanwhile, Auburn, they crush Alabama, they get hammered at Florida, and then they'll beat a pretty good South Carolina team. Is the Florida one the anomaly there?
I think definitely that Florida game was an anomaly. I think it's similar, I would say, to what we saw, or what we were just speaking about with the Big 12. You've got such a big game. I mean, that Auburn versus Alabama rivalry, I don't have to tell you, that is a whole nother level of rivalry matchup every time those two teams go at it.
And this was a revenge game because they'd lost in Tuscaloosa earlier in the season. Yeah.
Right.
And it definitely seemed they poured a lot into it. But just were not themselves against Florida.
And I think that they caught a Florida team that is really, really underrated. I don't think that the metrics have really caught up to what this Florida team is. Florida is one of 5 teams in the country who does not have a loss outside of Quadrant 1. And the other teams that you can talk about that in that conversation are Purdue, UConn, Houston. Those are locks to be 1 seeds this year. They are cemented themselves. And then San Diego State. So they are in elite company in terms of being able to take care of business when they need to take care of business.
Well, and that's interesting, because you talked about Florida in your pressure watch column, and the Gators are in the low 30s in the net ranking, which is very good, which suggests they're an at-large team, but they also don't quite show up. And then they've had some moments, like they're crushing Georgia, and they're barely hanging on in overtime. They're killing LSU. They win by 2, and only because somebody missed a 2-footer at the basket at the end of the game. What does Florida need to do to solidify its spot in the field?
I think it's exactly what I saw Walter Clayton say after their last game, and they've just got to lock in, because we've seen it. We've seen that they can get a 20-point lead on some of the best teams in the country during the first half. And so there's no question the level of basketball that they're playing. I just told you about their resume and what they've been able to do. But the reason that you're still seeing them in the 30s when these other teams are considered the top teams in college basketball is because you let your foot off the gas. You get up by 20 and you say, oh, great, good job, guys. And you go to the huddle, you take a deep breath. No, you've got to stay locked in, because these teams that you're playing against night in and night out are capable of coming back. The same way you can go up 20, they can erase a 20-point lead in the second half.
Now, let's move on to the Big Ten, because we know at the top, like Purdue's a 1 seed, Illinois is going to be in the tournament, Wisconsin's probably going to be in the tournament, but who else can play their way in over these next few weeks?
Oh, so the Big Ten is they're in a spot where really I think Northwestern is going to be the most controversial team in that conference, because their analytics just aren't up to par with some of the other teams that you've got on the bubble. You look at where they are in the 50s versus some of these teams in the mid to high 40s that we're watching here. But I've still got them in the field. I've got them in the last 4 in. I think that they for sure can keep their spot in there just by doing what they've done, because their resume is what's holding them in there. It's that win against Purdue. It's being able to keep up with the Big Ten schedule. I think another team from that conference that I'm looking at that has been a little bit underrated this year, maybe they've kind of come back to the pack, but they've shown good things, is Nebraska. Fred Hoiberg, we've wondered for so long, can he get things going there? And it looks like this year he really has that thing pointed in the right direction. And it'd be really rewarding, I think, for that program, for that fan base, and for him to be able to get that on the resume and show that as progress towards recruits, towards transfer portal players, towards potential assistant coaches, everybody, that look, we've been promising it's coming, and here is the proof.
Well, it feels like if they could just win away from Lincoln, because they're 1-7 on the road, but they've got at Indiana, at Ohio State, and at Michigan down the stretch.
Right.
You should go 2-1 in that stretch.
I think if you want to be in the field, you should go 3-0 in that stretch, because Indiana, they're just playing an outdated brand of basketball right now under Mike Woodson. There's questions about his future there. Yep. Chris Holtmann, of course, just
already fired.
Just got fired at Ohio State. Jawan Howard, we just saw Ward Manuel have to answer questions about his job security. And so if you're going up against 3 teams who might be making a coaching change right before conference tournament time, I think if you want to be in the field as a team that's right there on the bubble, someone's going to have a breakout performance and earn a spot. And so you've got to be able to keep up with that pace.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Nebraska's remaining schedule. They could very easily go undefeated the rest of the way, because it's not like Steve Peichel and Rutgers are having a great year. Minnesota's not really having a great year. So, yeah, this is that would be huge for them, because it feels like they've just never been able to get over the hump.
Yeah, and it feels like that athletic program more than anything just needs this going into the football season. Yes. I know you just got done talking about Nebraska football earlier in the week and how they're looking to get to a bowl game. It would be so big for that fan base to have postseason sports of any kind.
Plus, I just enjoy saying Nebraska ball, and I think other than their women's team beating Caitlin Clark in Iowa the other day, we haven't gotten a chance to talk about Nebraska ball very much, and that would be fun. Okay. Outside I would say this is a power conference in basketball, especially at the moment. But are we really looking at a 6-bid Mountain West this year?
That's going to be the question. And I put them in my pressure watch column that you've referenced. And I think that the pressure for the Mountain West, obviously, this is a high point for them. You want to celebrate it. You want to be at the top of basketball with 6 teams in the NCAA tournament. And like the Big 12, they did really well in the non-conference of building up those numbers to where when Nevada beats a New Mexico, when San Diego State beats a Colorado State, when those matchups happen, we're not seeing them drop significantly in these metrics. And so I think for them, the key the rest of the way, those 6 have to avoid losses to the teams outside of those 6 teams. If they can do that, I think they can get all 6 teams in, but it's going to be real close for a couple of them who are there on the bubble, who potentially, you get a Nevada who I think is the most to prove at this point. If Nevada ends up going out and beating multiple of those teams ahead of them, where does that put those teams? Does it drag them down more than it boosts up Nevada? That's going to be the thing to watch here as they hunt down these 6 bids. Yeah,
if it was the Big 12, we wouldn't even be questioning that. Okay, that's fine. It's tough conference. So yeah, that's going to be fun to watch down the stretch. James, we're going to have you back on because we are stupid when it comes to college basketball, and we need to not be, because there's a lot coming up. And of course, as much of a football guy as I am, the NCAA tournament is the best event in American sports. So I cannot wait. James, we will be talking to you again very soon.
All right. Good to hear from you.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.